Sleepy. Laura, can you hear me?
I think we might be on.
You can hear me.
I can hear you. Yep.
Perfect. I can hear you perfectly as well. Thanks for coming back.
You're welcome. Seems like a long time ago that we were here.
A lot of water under the bridge for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, there's Mr. Kevin.
Yep.
Looks like you're laying back in your easy boy chair, Kevin.
I'm having a bit of a challenge, Norm, with my computer's not booting up, so I'm on my iPhone.
Oh, okay.
So maybe wiggly. We'll just go with that for now.
You got it.
Oh, I got my computers now up and running. Something happened.
Okay. Well, you want to switch over or you want to stay? Up to you.
I'll switch over.
Okay.
It's much easier setup with that. So
Sure.
I'll sign off here.
All right. You must be home. Is that your study, Maura?
No, it's just one corner of my living room. Looks quite neat. The rest is a terrible mess.
Looks like a nice place to read back there with a lamp and a comfortable chair.
Yeah, it is indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you been, Norm? Been all right?
Yep, been great. The deluge of work has calmed down a little bit. At the beginning there, it was pretty crazy, but gotten now into a routine, so it's manageable. How about you?
Oh, well, being at home, I've realized how much time I usually spend traveling in and out of Kelowna, which, as you know, can take a long time, especially
Yes.
now from Peachland.
Mhm.
So I've actually found that even if I have 3 Zoom meetings in a day, like once it's over, I can do other stuff. Whereas if I'm in Kelowna and there's only an hour between meetings, it's
Right.
just not worth coming home. So in that regard, I've actually found it a lot more time to work on the garden and that sort of thing.
Oh, very good.
So,
I'm glad you've done that.
yeah. So we're all well. So just at least we can go outside into the yard and
Mhm.
look at the view in Peachland, which is pretty beautiful.
Yes, you are blessed.
So
How are your tulips?
tulips.
Yeah, it's tulip season.
I know. I think the deer. We don't have any tulips, but I think the neighbours, the deer, ate all the
Mhm.
tulips. Deer
Oh,
like
yeah.
tulips.
Yes, they do. Yes, they
So,
do.
but so I know that you've been mentioned a few times provincially.
You mean the RCMP are looking for me?
No, not that. I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about the Minister of Health mentioning, what you've
Yes,
been doing,
well,
which is
that's
great.
one person's opinion.
Well, no, I think it's great. Everybody cooperating. I think it's really very good. So
Mhm. Well, when you're
anyway,
dealing with
Kevin's back on a full screen now.
And his hair looks amazing. We're past 7 o'clock, so I'm going to make this live because we're already
here we
running late.
go.
So broadcasting, and you're live.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody to School District 23, Town Hall number 2, with Chair Maura Baxter and Superintendent Kevin Cardell. Two of you, thank you very much for coming back. It's been a while since we did our last one. What was it? 3-4 weeks ago, maybe? It seems like a lot longer than that. Appreciate you coming on. We did receive some questions ahead of time. And of course, to everybody out there, if you are registered, you can pose questions live in our questions and answer box. Just ask you to keep them as short and to the point as possible so I can get as many in as we can. And if you are watching on Castanet or through YouTube or Facebook and you want to be able to ask questions, you have to register to do so. It's not too late. Just go to teamokanagan.com, register. You'll get an email with the link. Click on the link and that'll take you in, so you'll be able to ask questions. So while we're waiting for some questions to populate on the live questions and answer box, we did receive some questions ahead of time through the Gmail site, and I've organized them a little bit so we're not repeating the same questions over and over again. But I must say that there are a couple of tough questions for the two of you this time. Not as easy as the last time, and I'm sure you'll be more than capable of answering them, but I'm giving you a warning ahead of time that there will be some interesting questions that are coming your way. So with that preamble, and I haven't scared you off, so that's good. The first question is, what ratio of students are currently enrolled in classes, whether remotely or in class, and how many are currently physically attending classes?
So I can answer that question. So we have over 23,000 students, and currently in terms of Tier 1 and 2 students receiving on-site instruction, it's not really classes in the same way we would traditionally think about it. We have about 330. We have another 65 or so vulnerable learners that are getting supports. And then we have some students from in their graduating years that are also coming in to get supports. And so we're close to about 400 students, and that is a little under 2% of the students are receiving on-site instruction, and about 98% are receiving remote learning.
Okay, thank you. In some universities, they've implemented a pass/ill option for students. When I first read the question, I thought someone made a spelling mistake, pass/fail, but it's actually pass/ill option for students. If they passed but received a low grade, they can have their poor grade changed to pass so as to not affect their GPA. Alternatively, if they failed the class, it can be changed to ill to accommodate for the stress of COVID-19. Is there any need for this in secondary schools? And is there any plan to implement a similar system?
Well, I think Kevin's going to have to answer that one too, because that's universities are different to secondary schools. We know that, and the way that students are assessed and marked, and we know that students are still going to be assessed, especially in their graduation year. But we do know that there are going to be some leeway. But the superintendent of schools, he's our chief educator, and he can answer that one better than I can.
So in the information that's been provided and is publicly available on our website, in terms of the ministry's frequently asked questions, it talks about assessment. And what's going to happen is there'll be one final assessment that's required of all teachers, K to 12, and they'll use their professional judgment to determine a final grade or assessment. Where it comes to secondary schools, it'll still be either a letter grade or it'll be a percentage, and it'll be some combination under the teacher's professional judgment of work done prior to the spring break and the announcement of suspension of in-class instruction, and the work that's been done since, because remote learning has continued, and we have engaged with our students across the system, and that work continues, and that's why there's on-site support for those students who are maybe falling behind as their teachers connect with them. Teachers doing incredible work. They're even, in some cases I've seen, of going above and beyond the call and making house calls from the end of the driveway to support a student with some math problems that they were having. I had a parent send me a picture of that happening. Now, that's not an expectation we have. I want to be clear, that's just amazing teaching by somebody. But in the end, we will be making a final assessment, and teachers' professional judgment will be critical in that to determine the final mark. And they have a great deal of flexibility about how they do that.
Okay. This question just came in live. It says, you just stated that only 2% of children are physically attending schools. Why is SD 23 requiring 100% of teachers to be starting to attend schools physically?
So that,
I'm just going to jump in here, because the question you just asked is, why are we expecting 100% of teachers to attend school
Physically.
Well, we haven't been doing that up to now. We are trying to have a plan where they will start coming back gradually, maybe once a week, to learn how to work with the new protocols around safety. And safety is obviously the board's one of the chief things that we're worried about here. And we're following all the guidelines as a Board of Education from the Ministry of Education and from the provincial health officer. And so, no, we are not expecting teachers 100% to be in schools. The superintendent has just sent a memo out, which he may want to talk to you about, to explain what we are hoping to get into place within the next week, so that teachers will visit schools and learn about how they're going to have to adapt. But certainly 100% of teachers are not in school.
on a given day. So what we are saying is that staff, understanding that at some point, whether it's before June or into September, are going to be looking to expand the on-site services and learning that we have currently going on in our school system, that staff are going to have to return to school to deliver services at some point. That may be before the end of June, that may be in September, that may be in November. We don't know yet. That'll all depend on what the provincial health officer says. So it's only prudent for us to begin preparing for that. And we have all kinds of safety plans, and our schools are safe places right now. We're following protocols, as the board chair has said, to make sure that's the case. And we would like to make sure that staff have been on site at least one day in a week. That's all we're asking at this time. And we're suggesting that that be staggered so that you'd have a third of your staff or a quarter of your staff come on any given day. And so that we can easily practice our physical distancing and follow our safety protocols and have them do the remote learning that they've been doing from home on site. So that's what's happening. We're being prudent, and we're getting into practice about making sure that teachers understand what the physical protocols are, and then we may even see gaps. We may learn from these days where you have a quarter of your staff and, hey, this is a pinch point in the school, this is something else. So if we do return to students, with students or more students, which is what we're hearing from the provincial health officer, whatever that looks like, we're prepared, and we've actually had experience and forethought. We also think it will calm people, because our schools are very safe places right now. Very few people, large buildings where you can easily physically distance. Certainly a lot easier to physically distance there than at shopping, grocery stores and shopping places that people have to go get sustenance. So we're certain we can do it safely. We're making sure that we're being prudent in our practice. And what we're asking for is a percentage of staff to show up each day, so that over a week, we'll have had all staff. Now, of course, we always consider safety first, and those who have significant medical issues that present significant risk with this disease, with COVID-19, they'll be following the same protocol we currently have right now, which is that they would continue to work remotely. And if they have questions about that, they can work with their managers and human resources, and of course, get representation from their locals to support them to make sure that we keep safe while we do a bit of practice about what might happen before the end of June or possibly in September. We have to get that practice and preparation in now.
So is there any indication that you might have to open up more of the schools to students before the end of this semester or end of June?
We have no official indication other than what we're hearing in the press. We're hearing some speculation, I think, and we certainly have heard that there's a request to have, slowly open up schools, invite more students in. We started with essential services workers from Tier 1 and offered the service to them. We've now opened it up for those who applied originally who were Tier 2 service workers, and we've had a number of them ask for that on-site service that we're providing. And we've also been asked to look to vulnerable students and students who fall behind. Those are things that our Chief Medical Officer has stated in public comments. And so we've been doing that work slowly and carefully and thoughtfully over the last few weeks. So we've had Tier 2 workers in, some are students of Tier 2 workers, some in previous weeks, a small number, and now we're expanding that they're entering this week. So we have about another just under 70 of those students coming into our sites. We've built an infrastructure around that. But as far as any definite information, we don't have any yet. We have no more than what you've heard in the local media. We're just being prudent in terms of saying, look, we just have 6 weeks left. We have to start planning and preparing for whenever this opening or reopening of in-class instruction, however that might look, could happen. And that could happen, as I said, in September, October, or before June.
Okay. A state of emergency was just extended, I believe it was yesterday, by the Premier. You think it's best for teachers and students to go back? That's a question, but I think you've answered that regarding the teachers going back. What about spreading the virus to kids and teachers comprised loved ones at home? I'm not sure that's what the word they wanted to use, but this doesn't seem safe. Why wasn't an email? Oh, this is a different question. So on the first question is no concerns with bringing teachers and more students back to the schools because, as you said, you have more ability to do social distancing than malls and grocery stores. Is that the extent of it?
Well, we have safety concerns all the time for how we support learning in our schools or remotely. And right now, as I said, 98% of that's being done remotely. There may be a time coming forward when there's going to be a lot more students in schools than we currently have. Right now, we've had no formal indication that that's happening other than what's been in media. What you're getting questions about right now is an email that I sent out that says we have to prepare for whenever that eventuality is, and we're asking teachers to come into and CEAs to come into schools 1 day a week and do their work from our school sites. Now, there are districts in the province that have never gone to remote learning and had people work from home. They've actually had staff actually continue to work from school sites to provide that remote education. Students are not in, but staff have been in. And what we're doing right now is we're just saying, we're going to ask staff to come in 1 day a week to do their remote learning from that space. All the same health concerns that we have about remote learning is required by anyone who has that are immunocompromised, right, or have medical conditions that put them at greater risk, are still in play. They're in play right now, where we've had people work remotely from home because that's the safest place for them to be. And that's still the case as we're asking staff to come into schools. I will say that when you have a very clean building and you have physical social distancing in the school and all the protocols are followed, you're as safe almost as if you're at home, even if you are immune compromised. I'm immune compromised, I'll share that publicly, but I'm at work every day because we have really safe procedures in place, and we're making sure we're physically distancing, we're washing our hands, we're not touching our face, and that we have soap and hand sanitizers available.
So here's another question. Actually, this conversation has engendered a whole bunch of other questions, but what happens if teachers have kids at home and they have to attend on-site work? Is there daycare being provided at the schools for teachers?
So there is that possibility in some cases if we have space available at the school in the current learning services that we provide, and that's a conversation that I think the staff have to have with their manager. And so we're having a public conversation about conversations that our staff, who are the ones asking these questions, should be having in the planning meetings that their managers will have with them over the next couple of days about what this looks like. But many people right now in our society have to go to work, and they need to find childcare. And what we're looking at when we're starting this at 1 day a week where they're on site, okay, and of course they can have conversations when they're presented with issues with their managers, so that we're going to be as flexible as we can be to make sure that we're attending to as many needs as we can. They should be able to find childcare in the community, and if they can't, then they may even bring their own child into their classroom, because it'll be them and maybe one other person easily physically distanced. But that's a conversation they need to have with their managers, and you know, perhaps I should have sent the memo out tomorrow rather than today, because we're now getting into a conversation that really, I think that most of the people asking questions can easily be having with their managers or their principals.
Okay, well, I'll ask one more question from this group, and then I'll go on to other topics. And if we have time, I'll come back to these questions near the end. With more and more staff members entering the school building and the growing call for all to wear masks, will masks be provided for students and teachers on site?
So the provincial health officer has not required masks. They say they're an option, cloth masks, and as part of our safety plan, which any staff member can certainly read online, and it was linked to in the email that I did send out today, they can bring their own mask if they wish to wear it, if they think that's helpful, and they can also bring their own hand sanitizers or wipes for their area. But I do want to say that we have higher frequency cleaning in the buildings, and they are clean and safe, and we're following protocols in terms of the safety of our school that we worked with and vetted through the Ministry and Provincial Health. So we know our practices are safe practices.
Okay. This is part question, part suggestion, saying that an email should be sent out to parents and teachers in advance of this town hall so people can actually watch. So just take that in case we ever do one more. You might want to consider sending out an invitation to others. As decisions are beginning to be made regarding the slow opening up of the province, I'm wondering if there will be the option of part-time school. If full-time is not going to be an option, question mark, will there be some kind of setup so that our kids can go for at least a couple of days a week? I ask because I'm concerned about my daughter's mental health.
Well, you know, the superintendent and secretary treasurer and deputy superintendent have been great about having Zoom meetings with trustees. We had one actually this afternoon. We get an update, we get an opportunity to ask questions and give some opinions and try to clarify things. And certainly we did talk about how might this look like, because we have no idea. If they say that there can only be a certain number of students in each school, and as you well know, Norm, we are well over capacity in our school district. We're not a school district that has a lot of empty classrooms, or is it 60% or 70%? I think the last count was 105% capacity in the school district. So it is impossible to have the whole school of students in at once and keep that social distancing. Just can't be done. So as the government, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, provincial health officer starts telling us, and that is what is happening, we're not making these decisions. They are telling us what their expectations are about us getting students back to school. And so far they've said that tier 1 and tier 2, and if they start saying we have to bring more students in, it would have to be in some sort of way that there was, maybe some sort of shift, maybe alternate days. Maybe we have to start rethinking in the future, the school calendar, going to throw that out. That'll make a lot of people start thinking, what do they mean by that? But we might have to really look for in ways to do this so that we can help our students, but I cannot see definitely before June all our students back in school. I just cannot see. When we hear about other provinces or other countries that are opening up, and it says they are opening up their schools, then when you delve a little bit deeper, you find out, well, they actually hadn't had anybody in schools. They hadn't even been doing what we were doing. And it's the same when they talk about opening up the economy. A lot of countries and a lot of, well, my sister lives in England. She can't go to a garden center and buy anything for a garden because all the garden centers were closed down. They were not considered essential. All the hardware stores are closed down. So when other jurisdictions start saying we are going to open it up, you have to say, what exactly are they opening up? Are they opening up stuff that we've already been doing for the last 2 months? So what we have to do here is we have to follow what we're told by the Ministry of Education for the superintendent, and that comes from the deputy minister, who he's in contact along with all the other superintendents on a very regular basis. All the board chairs in the province on Monday this week had a Zoom meeting with the Minister of Education to talk about some of these things. And we've been told there will not be 99.99%, there would be no school in the summer. They're not going to say we'll have school through the summer to catch up. So that's, we've been told, is out. But as far as when anything is changing, it's just like it all started. It's almost like day by day, you hear things and you start trying to say, okay, we've heard that, now we're going to adjust to this. And I just want to say from the board's perspective, everyone in our system has been great, from the superintendent and the senior staff, our principals and vice principals in the schools, our support staff who've been taking on jobs they don't, sometimes they don't always do those jobs, but they've been stepping in and doing that. And then our teachers. And from what I'm seeing, those teachers miss being in school as much as the children. So what we've all got to do is just try and say, okay, how can we make this work and make sure that we follow the provincial guidelines? And we found no reason not to trust the information that we've received provincially. So no, I will not be going on that march. I think it's sometime in the next day or so at Kelowna City Hall to say, give us back our freedom. We want to be able to do all these things.
Okay, thank you very much. So there's been a lot of discussion, and Kevin, you did mention that you're getting a lot of guidance from the media as to, or through the media as to the direction. And right now, well, I'm not sure if Dr. Bonnie Henry or the media is talking about or alluding to elementary students being the first to return. Have you heard anything to that effect?
So I'm certainly not getting my guidance from the media. What I'm saying is, when we talk about anticipating an opening right now, that's the speculation that's out in the media. I do have meetings regularly with the deputy minister, and I'm on the executive for the BCSSA. I'm their vice president, so with the Superintendents Association, and meeting with other superintendents as we look at how we plan in forecasting some return to something, whatever that is. There'll be a new normal, there'll be a new approach, and we're having those conversations. Directly, has there been any direct comment that we'll have elementary students back before June? No, we have no commitment of that. There have been speculation that that might be the case, but we don't operate in our planning on speculation at this time. And so when that information comes, we will not be moving past the phase that we're in right now, which is supporting more vulnerable learners. And we're doing that in a number of ways. One is with their academics so they don't fall behind. That's some on-site support. We're providing 7,500 meals a week. We're providing mental health supports through our counselors and ARC workers. We're not going to be moving away from remote learning for 98% of our students unless directed otherwise. That's going to go on for a number of weeks, I would guess, at least, if not until September. And we just don't know any different yet. And of course, we do have on-site supports right now in terms of learning for our Tier 1 and Tier 2 families that have requested that support from the original group of people when we surveyed all 23,000 plus students' parents and asked, do you need this support? What's amazing is most people have found a solution. They've taken the physical distancing, social distancing very seriously, and they're trying to stick at home and with family and keep their bubble small. The changes that we're suggesting we make right now, just to be prudent, are again, keeping the bubble small. So if you have a staff of 15 people and 5 are in one day, that's a very small bubble of contacts. And if they follow our protocols, they should be washing their hands, they should be physically distanced in their classrooms. And I trust our leadership staff and our professional staff who are coming in on those days to sort that out. But that's just a prudent practice when you think about it. One day a week just to know what it looks like, make sure physically, can we do this? If there's a change in practice coming either before June or in September or October, depending on how that looks like. We have not had any direction yet, and we may get direction in the coming weeks about either stay the course until June or here's a change in what we'd like to see in terms of minimum numbers of students back in. And when we get that information, we'll be sharing that with our employees first and planning with them, planning with the board to see how we best do that with safety is our #1 priority. The sites and the plan we have right now are absolutely safe as long as everyone follows those protocols.
So another question that came on that is, despite the safety procedures that you're talking about, if a teacher, or for that matter, a student doesn't feel safe going to school this early, are they compelled to do so?
Well, an employee is a different question than a student. We have no requirement right now for students to be at school because they can learn remotely. And an employee matter, we would deal with the employee based on a case-by-case basis, depending on what that rationale is. But employees are being paid, and it makes sense that they have to be doing meaningful work. And sometimes that may mean they have to work from on-site, and sometimes that means they can work remotely, which is something that we've chosen to do. And some districts have not. They're actually all working on-site.
So the next question I think might be for me. It says, in future, could we have parents or other teachers represented in these Zoom meetings? And my answer is yes. If parents or teachers want to organize panels and invite me to host or moderate and put the Zoom up, I'm happy to do so. So the answer is yes, but they would have to take the lead on it. Next question for you is, My son's elementary school has a total of 2 boy washrooms and 2 sinks in each. Likewise, for the girls, this is a school with over 500 children. The outside portables the children are in do not have sinks or washrooms. There are 30 children in 1 portable. In regular times, this is not adequate to support hygiene health habits. What supports and infrastructure will be provided to ensure the children are able to practice the regular hand washing recommendations during after this pandemic should children return to schools?
So I can't answer that yet because we don't know what it will look like when children return to schools. That's always a concern. Can we make sure we're maintaining the hygiene requirements that the ministry is asking us to do, and the provincial health officer, and that would have to be part of our planning. So it's certainly something that we would look at, and maybe increasing hand sanitizers in the building. We are certainly continually seeking extra supplies of those. But if we can't do something safely and it doesn't meet the health officer's expectations or the regional health officer's expectations, we would have to do it differently until it did.
So, which piggybacks well onto this question from one of the viewers. As kindergarten primary youngsters are developmentally unable to consistently physically distance, are not used to designated seating, and their curriculum is play-based learning where they share toys and learning tools. Can you please share details of your plan as to how you will ensure the safety of children and staff, especially as children could be carriers of COVID-19 even if they don't appear sick?
So again, that's a question that we're not that far down the road in our planning yet, because we don't anticipate having full classes. First of all, kindergarten classes are never 30, they're always a max 20. And we would have to look at how we are physically distancing and supporting students and making sure they know the new rules, the safety rules. We currently have small groups of students, 8 to 12, and some are certainly kindergarten age on site and being supported, and they're able to follow the practices that we've set out that are safe right now. And so we're learning what we can do if we're going forward. But will it look like regular school opening as the person has described it, with actually 10 more students in the class than we'd be allowed to put in? No, it will not look like that. And we'll be answering those questions depending on the framework or direction we get from the provincial health officer. And our view is they're not going to give us that direction. One of the other things we certainly are hearing is that whatever happens, it will look differently because safety is number one. And so I can't emphasize that enough, and we'll have to have a plan in place about how we operate that's safe. That's why the board chair was saying we might have to think about all kinds of different things, calendar, on and off days, split days, we don't know yet. But I don't think that we'll see a return to schooling the way it was before spring break, certainly not before June and not before we have a vaccine. And that's my personal view.
Right. Well, these are challenging times for students, teachers, and administrators alike. You have a big challenge, all of you. I would like to ask a question about special needs students at the high school level that are not currently able to use technology of online work. Is there any support for these students? I understand that other districts like Vancouver are starting in-school learning with limited students.
So we're looking at a respite model that will occur for some students in the district, and that planning is coming up in place. We don't know exactly what it will look like. We have to see if the model works and its safety. One of the challenges for some students with special needs is they require physical supports like feeding or toileting, and we've been seeking advice about how to do that safely and what equipment would be required, and we haven't got an answer back yet that satisfies us to be able to provide that service. So we do know that there are community supports out there, and we are trying to connect parents with those community supports for either respite or other learning. We may not be equipped to do everything that we were doing in a safe way prior to the new restrictions that came in because of the pandemic.
So the next couple of questions, I could have had 10 questions basically around the same topic, but I reduced it to 2, as you'll see in a minute why. Is there any chance of grad ceremonies happening? We had the same question a few weeks ago when we did this before. This is from a parent of 2 hopeful graduates. can you provide some clarification on how grad 2020 can have some form of celebration this year, i.e. several 1 to 2 hour mini versions of prom for groups of students under 50, that kind of thing. So you want to talk about grad?
Well, can I take this one, Kevin?
Sure.
First of all, everyone on the board is absolutely, we clearly know how important graduation is for these students. They've been in school 13 years. They've been looking forward to this. They were planning right up until the state of emergency was declared, and suddenly everything changed. So we know that this is important to them. We also know that it will be, I expect, impossible even by the end of June to have grad ceremonies, because we've heard over and over again from Dr. Henry that we will not be having large groups of people meeting. And we know that our school district is a large school district and has large grad classes, unlike some school districts who may only have 100 grads in the whole school district. And so we know that we will not be able to celebrate these graduations in the same way that we normally do. The superintendent or someone else, I'm not sure, has come up with a new word, which is that we're going to reimagine them. And what this means is that each school, as you know, has grad councils. They have teachers who are involved in grad. There are parents who are involved in grad, and they're talking about what could they possibly do that would acknowledge the achievements of the students, would honor them for their graduation, but would not look like we normally do. And it's going to be different, I think, it's going to be different probably in some of the schools and some of the classes. And we just have to wait and see what innovative ideas they come up with. And I think we'll be very surprised the sort of things that they come up with that will allow the students to celebrate the fact that this is their graduation year.
Right. So just as a point of interest, it looks like we're going to get the province's plan for reopening the province on Tuesday. In that plan, probably there'll be some mention about groups meeting,
Yes.
which might be different than the current no more than 50 rule. So once you see the plan, you might have more opportunities to look at the grad question. So just have a look at the plan in detail once it's public. I haven't seen it yet, but I did have some input, so I just wanted to keep that there. Kevin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I'll just add, under the current conditions, the chair's exactly correct. We could not celebrate in the way we have in the past. As a matter of fact, can't imagine how you do a parents even sponsor a dry grad, that overnight party situation, or a prom. Those are very challenging ideas. Celebrating graduation or reimagining, and yes, it's my word, Chair, is something that is actually happening right now. So we have our grad coordinating teachers, and they've been meeting and with principals, and I'm getting an update tomorrow, which I'm excited to hear. And they're coming up with some pretty terrific ideas about how we can make a meaningful celebration of this accomplishment. And what will happen going forward, I'll be sending a letter out to grade 12 families explaining that in the coming weeks, they're going to start hearing from their local grad committee, their school grad committee, about their plans for something exciting. And I've heard of some remarkable ideas across the province and how they do that, and how kids can even celebrate being, in the beautiful clothes that they've bought for prom, and like a promenade for 5, and then you tie all that together, and all of a sudden you have a promenade for 500, on a video. And so that's just one of the ideas I heard. And yet, so they are trying to think of ways to make sure that we honor these students, but it will not be the same. I know that's disappointing for everyone, but we have to be honest here too. We have to say, this is what we can do and what we are doing. And so there's some work reimagining what that will look like.
So do you think, to switch back to a different topic, do you think that you would have the flexibility to decide if you are asked to take more students back into schools, if you can actually take in the grad classes instead of the younger classes? Or do you think that will be dictated to you as to which grades are coming back?
I'm always worried to speculate what will come from government, and so that's the best answer I can give you. But whatever modeling comes out, we have a significant interest in all the grades, but in particular the young kids as they start their education. You don't want to get them behind. We know there's a bunch of evidence that says if they get too far behind, they don't catch up. And also how we transition with our senior students as they start to transition into post-secondary in the world of work. And so those are two areas of focus that you can be guaranteed, whatever the model is, we'll have plans to support them.
Okay. This question is directed to Chair Baxter. Maura, now that the school district meetings are available online for parents and ratepayers to watch from the comforts of their home, would you consider making these available full-time once social distancing restrictions are eased in the province?
You mean have our meetings
Available online for everybody
broadcast
to watch.
online? We have talked about this before, and obviously we're all doing this from our homes, which is a bit different than doing it all sitting around a table. But certainly, I'm sure it will come up again, having done this now and seen that you can make it sort of work. I think, yeah, it might be something that we would consider. Yeah.
Okay, well, that answers the question.
Yeah. Once we get back to the board table, some school districts do webcast their board meetings, and so we could certainly talk about that again. Yes.
We'll put that down as a yes, you would consider.
Yes, we would consider.
There you go. Okay. How many CEAs going to support us more for one-on-one? I think there's a word missing there. It's probably how are CEAs going to support us more for one-on-one when using technology doesn't work for the students?
So again, when we're trying to do remote learning, and we have some families and some students who certainly can't access education in that way for whatever diversibility reasons that they may have, we need to work first on a safety plan about how we would support that if it's on-site learning, and we then work on what the education plan is. And that work is underway, but and we have some models we're going to start trying as this extends farther into the weeks. But I encourage families when they're having those concerns to contact their principal or the district office, and we will try and connect them with supports in the community or evaluate their request and see if we can provide those supports as we slowly expand support to students in our schools.
Thank you. And for everybody watching at home, if you are registered by going on to teamokanagan.com and registering there, you can ask live questions. If you have not registered and you're watching it on Castnet or some other way, that's great, but you cannot ask questions. I have no access to my Gmail account during this live presentation. So if you want to ask questions, you have to go to register now. We still got 16 minutes, so it's not too late. If you want to ask questions, please go there. And what I'll do is I'll ask our two wonderful presenters to let's do short snappers and try to get as many questions and answers in as possible over the last 16 minutes. We ask our resource teachers for more help and in turn have to wait weeks for a response back to anything, whether it's for more support, requests for more speech and fine, and gross motor skills to be developed and then get denied. I told you you'd get some tough questions today. When is this pattern going to change and start helping us?
Well, we do hear from parents of students who have challenges and special needs, and that they have to wait a long time sometimes. We know that's a problem. We do the best we can, and I think right now too we're trying to do the best we can. I think this question is really not about what's happening. Sound to me is that it wasn't about what's happening now, but it's about how we're going to support those students better than we do now, and we do the best we can. We put an awful lot more money into our special education program than we receive from the province, and you know, we always know that there are some families who do have to wait a long time for tests, and they may not feel they're getting the support they need. We are aware of this as a board.
Okay. There is a growing sentiment among many parents and educators alike that the current learning situation is untenable. Why aren't districts calling it a day now and looking at summer school instead?
So we're following the direction of the Ministry of Education, the provincial health officer, and they're the ones that will provide direction about how we deliver service in this pandemic. We are an emergency response, so it's not going to look the same. The information we're getting back, we will be surveying the entire community about how things are going, but we're getting from school to school. So we're getting a lot of people who are very pleased with the service that is being provided right now. They're actually thrilled, understanding the circumstances that we're in. We have some people that are feeling it's not enough. We have other people feeling it's too much and they're overwhelmed and it's not working for them and their family and their circumstances, because you're talking about 23,000 plus students and their families and all of those unique circumstances. And so we're trying to meet that, as the chair said, as best we can. We're being very deliberate about it. My big encouragement always is, if it isn't working for you, talk to your teacher, talk to your principal. We'll do our best to make adjustments. We have some flexibility. If you're overwhelmed, we can dial it back. If you're not getting enough, in some cases, we can provide more. But it isn't going to be the same as when we're able to have you on site. Teaching is a relational business, and doing this remotely is very different. When you have those kids in front of you, you have them in small groups, you're able to do all kinds of marvelous things in terms of acquiring questions and support. And we have adults in supporting our students with diverse abilities right there on site. We've been asked to change this in a matter of weeks. This delivery system is something that in some cases is working really well, and in sort of some cases for those on the margins right now, it is not working well. And we'll continue to try and work with them. We'll continue to try and do better, but we may not be able to deliver the quality of service that they had when we were, in class learning. We're doing the best we can.
Right, and with some outstanding teachers, I might add too. So when you said principal, did you mean manager? Because before you said manager, are they the same, the manager, the principal?
Well, before, when we were talking about managers, it's because the email that went out to staff is not just for principals, it's for every site in the system. That was the discussion at the beginning. And so it's principals and managers. But when we're talking about students and learning, that's always a principal. So contact the teacher and then the principal.
Okay, thanks. I see we're going to run out of time. We only have 12 minutes left. So for those of you who are watching and you've submitted a question live today or prior to the event starting on Gmail, thank you for doing so. Superintendent Cardell, is there a way that people can get other questions answered if we don't answer them today here? Is there email you or email their manager or talk to their principal? Is that what happens if they're a parent or a student?
So I would always suggest talk to the teacher, email the principal. If they have questions they want answered and they think, I haven't got any answer there, they can always email my office and we'll get it to the right person. But we have trustees whose role is to make sure we're doing a great job and the best job that we can. And they can always email questions to them and they'll make sure they direct them to the right place. And the good part there is you have an advocate to try and get that right answer. That's the work they do. And I'll let the chair speak to that a bit more.
Awesome. And
No, I think, yeah, but you have 7 trustees and they can email the board and we all get it, or individual trustees with any of the questions.
Your email address is on the website of School District 23.
It certainly is, yes.
Okay, so again, for all of you, if you don't get your questions answered today, please look up the trustees' emails addresses, work with them, work with your teachers if you're a student. If you're a teacher, work with your principal. And if you're an employee, work with your manager. Did I get that right, Kevin?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, perfect. And by the way, we are recording this, and by tomorrow it'll be up on my Facebook site. So if you want to relive this experience, you can look at it and watch it again if you like. I am an essential worker in healthcare, but my kids are in high school, so they do not qualify for being at school right now. Both are struggling with this online learning, and one is at risk for failing. Will there be some form of in-class learning for kids who are really struggling?
So as I've said, we have began expanding that service. So contact your school principal or the teachers who are providing that remote learning to those students who are struggling. Let them know that's happening, and they'll build a plan with you to help support them and get them to be successful.
Did teachers get training to run Zoom conferences?
Well, we've had to provide that training in the first couple weeks, and so we created a Zoom video and Zoom in-servicing, and we put it up on our webpage and publicly, and it's been viewed over 10,000 times, and we only have about 3,600 employees. So it's being viewed by parents, it's being viewed by, I know, staff in other districts, and the ministry has actually asked our team to do in-servicing for other districts and ministry personnel. So yeah, it's one of those things that we've had to learn over time, and there's been a lot of learning. When we talk about together we learn, everybody's learning. Like teachers are learning, our board chair's learning. She's actually a Zoom master now, and she's pretty darn good. And we've got all kinds of people having to learn to do things differently as we go along. So we are, when we talk about doing our best, it's not a platitude. We're learners too, and we're trying to figure this out. And the only way we can make it be as good as it possibly can be, and I don't think it'll ever be as good as in-class instruction and students on our site. So I just want to be really clear about that. For it to be as good as it possibly can be, we have to communicate, we have to work together, and people who have those concerns have to reach out. And if they're not getting the answers that they need, understanding we can't provide every service, then they need to kick it up the ladder, so to speak, so that our trustees eventually get it and they're asking us questions.
Okay, so Maura will now call you the Zoomologist.
No, indeed not.
Zoomology.
I lost all my video today, and I found out all it was what I'd got my camera thing off.
With the use, this is a related question, with the use of technology to deliver education, it seems that teachers have several options to deliver this to students. Zoom for face-to-face class, Google Classroom, Fresh Grade, and some teachers are setting up Weebly website, I think that's how to pronounce it, to provide the assignments on. Is there discussion at the local or provincial level to begin to standardize this process more rather than having teachers using different platforms?
So that's a complicated question, because teachers have professional autonomy in terms of their contractual rights and their rights under legislation in terms of how they design learning, as long as it meets the curricular objectives that have been set by the ministry and what we consider regular practice. And so when we have teachers doing this is a comfort level for them and something that they're trying to be effective about. And so that's not an easy question to answer. I mean, there might have to be something in negotiations or something in a legislation level if this continues to carry on. But right now, people are going to deliver it in the formats that they're most comfortable with. And we're providing in-servicing in a very few of them, like Google Classrooms and Zoom, to try and get more people channeled into those software packages that we think have the best bang for the buck.
Is there any discussion at the provincial and or local level to begin to explore increasing funding to technology within the classrooms? For example, each student, no matter their socioeconomic standing, have access to a laptop for the school year.
So I haven't heard any thoughts around that. I don't know if the chair has. I'll ask her in a moment. But what you need to know is we have technology in school and enough technology in school to support students while they're learning in class. And we've loaned out about just under 2,500 Chromebooks and iPads to support students who didn't have access to that technology. And if somebody's in that position, they need to contact their principal, and we would be delighted to continue to help them. We've also been working with TELUS and Shaw to get free internet in their homes. We recognize that access is a real concern, and we're doing our best to make sure that that doesn't become a barrier.
what's happening to your capital plan? In particular, are we building a new Rutland Middle School? So let's talk about the capital plan overall. What's happening to that? Are you moving forward with anything?
We're still waiting to hear. Norm, you know very well that in the end, it all comes down to what happens at the government level, what happens with the higher uppers in the government to make these decisions. And it's a good time to say how much we appreciate all the advocacy that we've had from you on behalf of the whole school district. But I have to say, particularly Rutland Middle School, because you've certainly gone out to bat for us on that. And
your time is up, Maura. Your time is up on that one. But what about, we are finishing Lake Country right now.
well, Lake Country's going ahead. We're still optimistic and confident that we will be opening it and on time, and we will be. We're really working hard on the west side for a new high school. But certainly Rutland Middle is up front and center every time we have an opportunity to, not only trustees and the board as a whole, and individual trustees, but senior staff as well, to really promote the idea. And Rutland could be used as an example, and it is actually, of what are we going to do about not very many washrooms? What are we going to do about making sure that we keep as many students as possible in the school, and keeping them safe and having enough washrooms and hand sanitizers. So we need to be making sure that the government's going to be providing those sorts of things. So we keep on.
Yeah, and you can rely on my colleagues, Steve Thompson and Ben Stewart, to also advocate for anything that School District 23 needs on the capital side. That's what we're there for. We've enjoyed doing that for the last 11 years, and we'll continue to do that. Grammar folks, could some students opt for some online classes in the 2020-21 year? Could the SD provide this model? My child has enjoyed self-pacing and not having to deal with bullies. In fact, my child has completed assignments ahead of time.
So we
That called distance learning, Kevin?
well, we have something called eSchool, and it's a bit
Yeah.
more of a blended learning model.
Yeah.
And government is looking at what distributed learning will look like. Work continues on these pieces. I'm not sure teaching will be the same for students as we move forward. We may have more people who want to work remotely, and we're getting better remote practices even for our distributed learning programs, and some families may choose to do that. I've certainly heard from our district student council that some members of the council are enjoying this kind of learning more than they were in class, and others are wanting to be in class desperately and be learning with their peers. We'll be delivering multiple streams. That's unlikely unless it's the format we're required to continue to do in support of safety because of the pandemic. That could happen. What will happen in terms of greater enrollment in distributed learning and a change in the way it's delivered with more of this contacting through Zoom or other Teams or other software pieces, that's yet to be determined. And I think that's might be a silver lining of this process, that we might find some better practices in supporting learning and for those students who want to learn that way.
So the last question I have time for here, I'm not too sure if you'll get the context. It says, regarding teachers returning to schools, will that apply to all levels, elementary, middle, and secondary schools? This question was submitted about 20 minutes ago, if that helps.
Yeah, so the context is back to the email that I sent out today saying that we needed to practice on-site protocols and begin preparing and planning in case there's a change in the model of delivery. Right now, there's, as we've said before, there's no concrete indication that that's going to happen. Maybe we'll hear something on Tuesday, but we need to be prepared whether that's September or June. And so it's for all staff. We're going to have to sort out how we get all staff working on site who've been working remotely. for at least one short period during the week so that they know the protocols. We can see where the concerns are and we can adjust plans for when the framework changes and we're delivering education in a different way again.
Okay, well, because you were so concise with that, I'm going to give you one more. What happens if a student disputes a grade? For grade 11 students, every percentage point can count for scholarships to university.
So the teachers have professional autonomy to determine those grades, but the School Act has not been abandoned in this process, and so they can always appeal the grade to the principal, who can investigate and in the end can make a determination about the grade. So hopefully we won't find many of those circumstances, and that our teachers who really do understand that this is a unique circumstance, they're in the midst of it, will be thoughtful in the administration of grades, and people will feel that they got a fair assessment.
So thank you again. As I said somewhere in the middle of this, these are very challenging times for most students, teachers, administrators. I want to give my hat out to everyone out there who's dealing with COVID-19. That's almost all of us. To both of you, Maura and Kevin, thank you for coming back on. To all of you who are watching, if you want to watch it again, it'll be on my Facebook site tomorrow. It'll be recorded, and it has been recorded, and it'll be up there. For those of you who didn't get your questions asked or answered, you have the invitation to go to the School District 23 website and look for the trustees' email addresses and email them with those questions. They'd be happy to champion answers for you. If you are an employee, Mr. Cardell has asked you to work with your managers, superiors, I guess, people you report to, and work through that. So without any further ado, Maura, Kevin, thank you again. And good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you so much.